based on what we've been discussing, that not only is the composite of nefesh, ruach, and neshama, does it relate to the human being himself, but there is a national nefesh, ruach, and neshama, which relates to Klal Yisrael. As Rav Chaim Volozhin just explained, Avram perfected the nefesh of Klal Yisrael. Yaakov was the ruach, the spirit of Klal Yisrael. And Yitzchak Avinu, being the unblemished offering, the purest in mind, perfected the neshama of Klal Yisrael, the intellect, the mind, the ability to choose between right and wrong, not being directed through instinct, but rather by choice. This is a derivative of the neshama, one having the ability to choose right or wrong, to be fully deserving for his initiative of the positive, and to be fully culpable and liable for the choice which is the wrong choice. The Gemara tells us that the Jewish people were given three parnasim, three administrators, three overseers: Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. Moshe, the Talmud tells us, in his merit, we had the manna for 40 years. In the merit of Aaron, we merited the Anei HaKavod, the heavenly clouds, which were engulfed, which protected us from all the elements, and the many other amenities which were miraculous, which they provided. That was in the merit of Aaron. And the wellspring which traveled with us for 40 years, which provided water for millions of people and for the livestock, this was in the merit of Miriam, the sister of Moshe and Aaron. If one would establish a gradation system between Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, the least of the three would be Miriam. Would say Miriam corresponds and addresses the nefesh of Klal Yisrael, the life source. And as Rav Chaim Volozhin explained, what does the nefesh, the life source, provide? This is the koach hatenua, the ability to have movement. What discerns between a water cistern and a living wellspring? A living wellspring, it continues this movement, this activity. Water is continuously, unceasingly being churned out. This is in the merit of Miriam. This is the profile and the characteristic of nefesh. Aaron, being less than Moshe, although the times where there's an interchange between mentioning Moshe first or Aaron first, but factually he was less than Moshe in his spiritual dimension. So if we would evaluate him and say he would correspond to the Ruach of Klal Yisrael, he provided and he addressed the spirit, Anei HaKavod, the clouds, that's Ruach, miraculous, all-containing, insulating cloud covering on all sides. This is the merit of Aaron HaKohen. Moshe was the ultimate. Moshe, who's negated all that exists in his life, is God. His physicality was totally negated, and all he was neshama, was the soul. And his dimension of soul was the equivalent of all the Jewish people. In his merit, we had the manna, the mun, and as Nachmanides explains, the mun is the Shekhinah, is the divine presence which sustains every entity of existence. However, it was materialized into this wafer-like substance, which was miracle food, which has sustained us for 40 years. We read about the building of the Mishkan. There were many materials that were needed to build the Mishkan. God said, "V'asi li migdash v'shechanti b'socham," make for me a sanctuary that I should dwell in your midst. In terms of metals, the three metals which are mentioned that were required, that were needed for the building of the Mishkan. Two of them are precious metals, gold, silver, and the third metal, which is a non-precious metal, is copper. The Torah tells us, Zov, Kesef u'nechoshes. Gold, silver, and copper are the metals that are needed for the building of the Mishkan. The Yalkut, which is a compilation of Midrash, tells us, Zov, Zeu Mishkano Shel Moshe. This is referring and alluding to the Mishkan that was overseen by Moshe Rabbeinu. Why is it equated to gold? Shel Ya'ov LaKadosh Baruch Hu Gezov. It was beloved to God as gold, being the most precious of the metals. Kesef, silver, Zebayis Rishon. This corresponds and alludes to the first Beis Hamikdash, which was built by Shlomo Melech. The Talmud tells us that Shlomo Melech ruled the world supreme. The wealth of the Jews was one of a kind, where silver, based on the verse and prophets, had no greater value than stones lying in the street. Therefore, Chesef, silver, alludes to the Bayis Rishon, the first Beis Hamikdash. Nechoshes, copper, alludes to the Bayis Sheni, the second Beis Hamikdash. And why does the word Nechoshes, copper, allude to the second Beis Hamikdash? Because in Hebrew, Nechoshes means something that's deficient. Nechushta means something that's the lowest. There were 5 essential components or presences that were lacking in the second Beis Hamikdash. So each one of the metals alludes either to the Mishkan, which is Moshe, to the Bayis Rishon, which was built by Shlomo Melech, which is the silver, and the copper, which is Bayis Sheni. Now, what happened to the Mishkan? After the Beis Hamikdash was built, the temple was built by Shlomo Melech. It was hidden away. Because of its dimension of holiness, it cannot be used by anybody else beyond that point. It was not captured by the enemy, but it was hidden away. If you would parallel the Mishkan, the Bayis Rishon, the first temple and the second temple, to the 3 components of Klal Yisrael, I would say that the Mishkan was given to us mostly Migdash v'Shechanti b'Socham at the most advanced level, because it was overseen, and the intermediary between ourselves and Hashem was Moshe Rabbeinu, was to address our souls, to perfect the neshama of Klal Yisrael. The Bayis Rishon was given to us to have a relation with God, was to perfect our spirit, our ruach. And the Bayis Sheni was given to us, the relation with God was to perfect our nefesh, our life source. How do we see this? The Gemara tells us, based on a verse in Eicha, in Elegies, Lamentations, that the Bayis Rishon was destroyed, al ozvam es Torosi, because the Jewish people abandoned the Torah. Lo birchu b'Torah tchila, they did not say the blessing prior to studying Torah. Their involvement was more for the sake of intellectualism, not for the sake of observing the Torah meticulously. Torah, as we said before,